Are you looking to expand your mind? Do you like to challenge and be challenged? Looking to improve yourself and share your experiences professionally and personally? You're in the right place. Welcome to Scoutcast, Roasting Marshmallows, with your host, Rolf Surd.
And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Scoutcast. My name is Rolf Surd and I'll be your host. And today I have a very special episode. It's the first time we introduce a guest that is not an actual member, or he is a member of 4Scouts, but he doesn't work at 4Scouts, but he works with 4Scouts. And his name is Patrick de Veer, and he's founder of Greenaumatic. And he's a 4Scouts member since 3 months, right, Patrick?
I've been signing up for the membership 3 months ago, correct?
Cool. And so the 4Scouts membership, for everyone who doesn't know, are for companies that share similar values with 4Scouts and believe that can help the ecosystem to become better. We coach teams and giving all the support that teams need to achieve their success. And Patrick, you want to, first introduce yourself to the listener, and then we'll talk a bit more about your goals and Greenaumatic and everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, my name is Patrick de Veer. I am indeed founder of Greenaumatic. In a former life, I founded a software license management company called Belay. That has been like 12 years ago.
Okay.
And
so for licenses, we can also ask you questions about...
You can always ask me for questions there if you want to talk about Oracle, IBM, SAP, Microsoft,
all right, so
all those licenses.
It's going to be a future episode then.
Yeah, I have to say, I have to get my memory a little bit up. Yesterday I had a nice talk to somebody about Oracle and I had to dig into my archives. But still, if people have license management questions, then contact me. However, I didn't raise that for this, of course. I started that company. I already wanted to do something good for the world.
Okay.
And I failed.
Because licenses are bad, or?
No, well, you can see it this way. The moment we started, we wanted to bring the world around licensing more. We wanted to make it more transparent, so most of the software vendors will be less aggressive towards their customers, and we hoped in that way to create a better environment for the people, but for the companies. But at some point, also we wanted to build a company where a lot of people, feel good, they do best, and they start doing all kinds of other things than only the business side.
Yeah.
And that we kind of lost out of sight when we started from 12 years ago. We started really fresh and like enthusiastic, and we making great company. But then money came in. And
it ruins everything.
Yeah, actually, you start chasing the money, and the more people come in, you need to have more money. So, and you get in this spiral, right? It's something you seem to lose out of sight. And slowly, I got less motivated.
Okay.
And in the last 3 years, I really was not motivated at all anymore. And you don't notice that it's under the surface a little bit. And then after a while, I was like, I need to stop this. At that moment, I didn't know, but then I started my own. I thought, okay, somebody wanted to buy my shares, was good, and I took the time to think. And this is
all right.
A short introduction how Greenaumatic started.
Yeah, exactly, because we can talk. I think we can fill an entire episode about licensing and your experiences in that company. So, let's save that for another time. Today, before we go on to Greenaumatic, I just want to introduce my other two guests as well, Enrique and Panche, my colleagues. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hey.
So, Enrique, you've been working with Patrick for the last 3 months mostly, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the part that, let's say, we definitely identified, I don't know if Patrick remembers, but like was one of the first conversations we actually had, was about how we see companies, right? And this conversation about how money works, that you just have this endless growth, that everybody just expect that you grow forever. It's just like not sustainable, right? Like, yeah, there is the amount of resource we can consume, and eventually this is going to run out. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting subject to talk about, not only on the sustainability part, but also like on the company part, right? Is there a limitation of how much you can grow before you start actually damaging? And I think we share the same idea that, yeah, there is some growth that you can achieve, but then after that, maybe you should just stay there, right? Like a tree doesn't keep growing forever. It also stops, and then it's part of an ecosystem.
Yep.
Well, a tree eventually dies, just like a company.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
should a company die then?
Well, should I don't know if it should, but it's I think it's an inevitable outcome at some point.
But it's
Nothing lasts
still
forever,
part of
right?
it is still part of the ecosystem.
Yes,
And
that's
that
correct.
exactly.
Even when it dies, it has a function.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what a lot of people misunderstand. Of course, we in our current world have a lot of thought that everything has to go steep this way. Oh, you can't see it, of course, but my hand is going
The YouTube channel is in
it's
the
going up.
works.
But yeah, you know what I want to outline here.
Yeah.
But
Right.
exactly, that's not going to happen. Not for companies either, not for people. And that's something we need to bear in mind, right? I think that's the key element in this.
So you touched upon quite an interesting thought in your introduction. Like you started your previous company with this also ethical mindset, right? And then the moment the company started growing, and I think maybe growing here is the key word. Like, how do we define growth?
Yes.
Something changed. So then my question went to you is like, is it possible to achieve growth while keeping your initial focus and initial drive and even core values?
That's a very good question. I think, well, maybe I have to only give you the answer like, I don't know, because I'm now on this journey to find out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let me tell you this. What I think is that I was with one partner, and we both had the same ideas going somewhere. We put money in, we started growing, which was fine, and until then it was still going the same direction. Then more people came along, also more partners came on board, and growth in the sense of financial growth, that was something that went pretty well. The other parts, you could see that all the other partners, as far as I could tell, they were not that much interested in the other part. Although on the surface it looked like it, but in principle, if you really look at the decisions that were made underneath, and I think we can probably talk about this later as well,
Yep.
what you see in the political landscape, but it is actually talking the talk and walking the walk, right? I mean, if you really want to do it, and I blame myself as well, right? If you really want to do something, you need to show and do it, and not talk about it. And I think that's the main thing that I see a lot happening within companies, especially if there's financial growth going up. I see quite some examples. Then everything is fine because in our heads, and we have been there for many years, we are, yeah, how do you say that? There's a fancy word for it, but basically programmed to think that financial growth is the only growth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because talking the talk and walking the walk, that's what you mean, because you've mentioned a contradiction of decisions, right? That so they make a decision about doing something about, I don't know, like CO2 emissions or something, and then the actions are not really working towards that. Is that what you mean by talking the talk and walking the walk?
And there you have a lot of examples on many levels. You can talk about at company level, as I just experienced myself, but you can also see it at a global level where the UN has great goals outside, which is, by the way, very good. Once in a lifetime, we now got a global goals, sustainable development goals, where everybody agreed, okay, this is what is good for the world, and they outlined they detailed it, which is fine. But then it has to drop down to our level, and there's a lot in between. between those sustainable development goals, because then you get the EU has to do something. The memberships of the EU are just limited to the EU for now, but this
Yeah.
works on a global scale. Then somebody at local government level needs to do something, then it needs to drop down to actually the companies, large and small, and then also to people. Well, I'm now putting it as a waterfall, but it's
Yeah.
of course not that way. But then if you then see what contradictions we have in the world, it's amazing. For instance, Mark Rutte, I think he's had a nice, I think a few months ago, he had a very great sustainability talk. And I was like, okay, if you think this is all sustainable, there's really great promises, I like it
Mm-hmm.
from when he's talking. But at the same time, look at the crisis, what happens, what we do in our tax system, how we treat companies like KLM. It's complete contradictory to what those objectives are. And
Yeah.
then I'm confused.
And
Yeah,
and this
I
is also
understand.
the reason why you're. We're going to talk about that in just a bit, but you're applying to become the Minister of New Economics. Is it exactly these
That
kinds of reasons that you say like, okay, I'm gonna try and do something about it by putting myself up for election?
that triggered, at least I saw that coming by. You can put yourself as a candidate, and when I was thinking why would I like to do this, is because I'm very confused of. Although I don't understand politics, by the way,
Yeah.
that's the first. So a lot of people ask me, why are you doing it? You're not really politically savvy, right? But that was indeed the case, Rolf. I think.
Okay.
And you see it at different levels. A lot of levels that I think this is so strange, or even people around me that say, I want to do this, but at the same time they do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we're all human. I do the same thing as well. Like, you, one of the questions is, okay, what do you do yourself then as a person?
Yeah. So are you
So
a
yeah.
vegetarian? Because that's the biggest thing that a
Well,
person I think can do to become more.
I still don't know what I am, because
Okay.
my girlfriend for sure is actually not even vegetarian. She doesn't eat meat, but she eats fish.
Right.
So
Pescatarian, or how do you
so
call it?
yeah, I actually have no clue.
Okay.
And to be honest, what I am is I eat meat maybe once in the 3 months,
Yeah,
and that's
flexitarian. No,
yeah,
for
and
real.
yeah. But the
I
funny
know.
part is, the longer you don't eat meat, the less you long for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand.
I used to be a huge meat eater. I can tell you that. Well, yeah, yeah, you crave for a piece of meat,
Hmm.
but after a while, and that was not by my own choice, because well, you have a girlfriend at home and
Yeah,
she does that.
exactly.
Um, but that stimulated also to dive into this, and I think her motivation for doing this is a bit different than mine.
Hmm.
For her, it's more like the animals that she feels for.
Yeah,
For me, it's more the impact on our world.
yeah,
If you look at, indeed, we can talk a lot about how the uh, yeah. I just yesterday read an article about the cultured meat.
yeah.
Wow.
So it happened yesterday. I think there was a message in Singapore. The first restaurant served chicken,
Yeah.
completely, we can say brewed, because it's like in a beer brewery type of approach they use.
Yeah, it's grown in a lab. I think
It's grown in a
yeah,
lab. Yeah,
yeah,
it's taking DNA and it's basically growing to something that you really recognize and taste exactly the same.
yeah.
Of course, you can think about this a little bit more, that, ooh, that's creepy or not. For me personally, that's a great thing, right? I mean, at the same time, it has a lot less impact
Hmm.
on biodiversity, on water consumption, on CO2, but also the animals themselves. So it's a huge benefit for all of the.
Yeah, and
But
I don't know if it's creepy, right? Because if you see how some of these animals are treated, I don't know what is more creepy, right?
yes,
Growing something in a lab, or seeing how a chicken like has no beak and no feathers and nothing. I don't know.
exactly.
Exactly. And
And
also
it,
our fruits and vegetables are also grown in a lab, right? So
yes, yeah, and
Yeah,
come to if you take that a little bit forward, then you think, why are we? And of course, the funny part was, I think there was a tegenlicht session a few months ago,
hmm,
where in the Dutch, actually the invention of this cultured meat is a Dutch guy. And this Dutch guy, he actually died.
Okay.
But before he died, he gave it to a US company as a pet and said, well, with a very great mind, thinking US companies can make things big. And he went to San Francisco and gave it actually to this company and say, look, I'm going to die, but you can use it
To make the
and
world a better
to
place.
make the world a better place. And they made it. And at some point they came back to Holland
Yeah.
and they wanted to open it here in a restaurant.
But no one
And
was interested?
no, well, the thing is, yes, there were a lot of people interested, and there's even one of the restaurants, I don't recall the name. They have still a piece of meat sealed in their fridge
Okay.
because, how do you say that, Keuringsdienst van Waren in English? Um, well, the authorities,
Yep. That
they
check
they
up all
they
the
they,
stuff.
they found out and they basically closed it and sealed it because it's not allowed because
Right.
they don't consider it meat. They don't even know what to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
this
I get
sorry,
also that a bit. It's we're doing quite a lot of experimentation, which is it's the only way to drive progress. But I think it also takes time to adopt
sure, yeah,
and not just adopt, but also wear out all the unintended consequences because we don't really know what possible consequences can this have, right?
I
And
agree.
and that takes time. That takes time, and it helps
Yeah.
also with adoption. And I wanted to go back to a question. Like we dove really into this food
Yeah.
area of sustainability, which is, I mean, it's a big topic.
Mhm.
Isn't there a way to also raise animals for food, but then in a sustainable way?
Well, I have some thoughts myself, but I'm not an expert. But if you watch a lot of those documentaries, right, then there's almost no way of doing that in a sustainable way because you need so much land. You can't.
What if a family just has a chicken coop in the back of their yard and raises a few chickens and has chicken once every 2 weeks?
Well, if you consider to eat this like only a few occasions a year, then it's probably doable. But
Yeah.
if you want to have it on your plate every day, then it's not doable. That,
No, but that's also if you look historically, probably from what ancestors of humans ate several hundreds of thousands of years ago, the consumption of meat, well, it was there, but it was not as prevalent and as
yeah,
accessible as it is now.
Yeah, I read it was a luxury product like in the Middle Ages, like only the rich actually could afford to eat meat.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, I'm not.
and the problem was also storage, right? Like there was no way
Yeah.
you can store meat for a long period
Yeah,
of time.
I'm not sure if you have read the Homo sapiens
Yeah.
book. He gives an example there as well, right? You 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 travel around, you eat whatever you come across. But in the old days, and of course,
Correct.
a lot of people that are pro or con, they go back to the same area, and one says, "Look, we are made to eat meat because the ancestors ate it." The other one says, "Yeah, but look, we traveled around, we ate everything, and once in a while we killed an animal because that's what we encountered.
Hmm.
We actually could not eat it because we had to invent fire first." So, but but yeah, there
Yeah,
are
that's
two.
that's a weird. I mean, it's a weird reason, right? Because in the end, like, it's not because we did something in the past we should still keep doing it. It's just like
Yeah.
for me, it's makes not much sense of this argument because also in the past we didn't eat as much as we eat now, and yet we do eat way more every day, right? So
Yeah.
like, then let's stop eating, let's stop producing because in
Yeah.
the past we didn't eat that much.
Well, there
But
are
that,
also arguments for that, Henk. There are
What
also
you mean?
arguments that,
yeah.
like, well, basically, overabundance of food is actually cause of a lot of problems that people might
Yeah,
have.
correct.
But I think the underlying problem is willingness, right? I think are we willing as humankind to change stuff? Are we willing? But I think we proskenate. We as humankind,
Hmm.
Yeah,
we basically say, look, you see it with everything on smaller things, but also as a company, the difficult things on the longer term you don't want to address now. The simple, nobody does that.
Yeah, you want
If
to
I
be
want to do,
comfortable, right? You want to probably maintain balance, be at a comfortable level,
yeah,
and then why
if
would you
you,
go through the
yeah,
pains of?
if I say I'm the tax authority, I say to you, Rolf, next April of next year, August, you need to put your tax declaration in.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that now, right? I mean, this is very simple.
No.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nobody does that.
Yeah.
So, and if you say now there's a climate problem or there's a whatever other biodiversity problem, and it's far away, so there's also distance is a problem. So we as humankind are not made for this.
So how do you plan to address that with Greenaumatic then? Or let's
Exactly.
say okay, maybe you can explain what Greenaumatic does, because I
Well,
guess, yeah.
that is a fair point. I try to contribute my way, right? I started Greenaumatic in the sense of the skills I have as a person to combine it in that company, but then convert it into something that I think contributes to the world. And I want to do that step by step. Will I succeed? That's something we have to see. But I think step by step is, I think, the answer for a lot of things, because you step by step you can achieve something, but you can also show result once in a while and help others to see it, right?
Yeah,
And
so
then the
basically,
snowball effect should start
Yes,
somehow.
because on the website you mentioned that you help companies get insights how they are contributing to a better environment or its destruction, and then you basically try to map it like, okay, you've spent a euro or a dollar, and this was the global or the impact on the environment that that dollar has made.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
does that help companies actually change course, change direction, or?
I think it does. I think it's about every decision you make is useful. So if you, I'm not sure if you, well, one of the basic concepts I've looked at is integrated reporting, and it sounds a bit strange, but integrated reporting is maybe not the right name, but integrated thinking is probably the better name. Meaning, if you have 100 euros to spend,
Mhm.
and the only thing you think is financial gain, you will probably choose for a option that has a higher financial gain. If you
Yeah.
think about financial gain plus, oh, but also my stakeholders are looking for reserving the nature around them or
Yeah.
having a better social environment, and you start, it's a more complex decision
Mhm.
process, but you start thinking more about, oh, how will I spend this 100 euro in the right way? I can cover all these three elements,
Mhm.
or maybe more. And I think that decision I would like to influence with data.
yeah. So if I understand correct, your first step is basically awareness of how much you are actually spending in what, and then if they have this awareness, because probably right now myself I'm totally lost. Let's say as a company I have no idea how much we actually impact on the environment. So for
Mhm.
me it's I cannot act, right? So
Hmm.
I guess that's what you're doing first is like awareness of what you as a company, or is as a company, or is it like as a consumer as well? Is this your
Well,
product is for B2B or B2C?
no, it's B2B, because that's what I've never been B2C, so this is the reason why. But I think personally, it can go even the way to your personal level, right? I mean, it doesn't have to limit that way. We as people, well, companies consist of people. So, but well, with Greenaumatic, I like to focus first on, yeah, it's a B2B thing.
Okay, and because I had a kind of similar experience at the FMO, where they would do loans for small businesses, and they would judge these loans like they would either grant it or decline it based on the ESG of these companies,
Yeah.
or like they were really small businesses in developing countries. So there was some sort of incentive for these companies to consider their impact, but how is it for a company interesting to to really check how they're doing for the environment? Because like we've been saying, like, okay, money needs to grow and the company needs to grow, and yeah, they want to do that in a sustainable way because that is what society is expecting from them. But is there like a real economic driver for it as well?
And this is the holy grail question. But I personally think we have to think a little bit different, outside of and what I think we discussed it before, financial growth. But
Mm-hmm.
in the end of the day, it is the benefits. Basically, what you're asking, if I'm an entrepreneur, what
Yep.
benefits me for thinking also about environment or the social side.
Yeah.
A lot of things have to do with how your stakeholders look at you. So if your stakeholder is a customer
Mm-hmm.
and basically they care, especially the youth nowadays, they care about how your products or services are being put together in the right way, and you
Yeah.
don't listen to them, you lose them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
that's a
it's
and that's a
definitely.
viable business thing, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing to do with, oh, I like, even if you don't like to reserve nature resources, whatever, it makes sense to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It can always almost become like a marketing thing, come out of the
Yeah,
marketing budget.
and I think, well, that's a complete different area I would like to talk about as well later. But yeah, but I think, yes, sharing what you do
Yeah.
to your stakeholders in an authentical, being authentic around it. I
Yeah.
think that's the key, also in marketing. Then you will have the highest results. You see,
Yeah.
most companies that jump on it or jumped already on it in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
they have been growing.
Yeah.
And maybe you, I don't know if you have seen the Decade of Action movie.
I have not. No.
Uh, Paul Polman, the former CEO of Unilever,
Yeah.
he outlines a lot of figures about companies that started to look in this direction and how they perform, also money-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But once you look at performance nowadays, you should not look only at money-wise, right? Should also look at image. You should look at the whole supply chain that they put
Yeah.
in place.
Yeah.
Um, and this is something that is difficult for some entrepreneurs, and especially I think the larger ones, because I think the larger ones are often very. It's like a mammoth tanker.
Yeah.
They can't shift direction really easily.
Yep.
Plus the fact, I think the more people you have in a company, the less they feel more connected to these type of things. But in the smaller companies, like family companies, they might already do this already for years.
Yeah.
Only they don't really put
Yeah.
a label on it, right?
Right.
And that might help them even to excel. But I think in general, what you see, and that maybe to come back to the governance where we started with the UN, going to
Mm-hmm.
the EU, then to the local, and then you get all kinds of regulations that are applicable to larger companies. Yeah, so there's a EU taxonomy coming. They basically ask larger companies to report their sustainability in percentage of revenue, capex, opex.
Yep.
Well, aside if that's easy to calculate, but a lot of these companies, they will, if you go on their websites, you already see how great and sustainable they are.
Yeah.
The question is that really true?
Yeah.
Exactly, because I've also read that you feel that the words sustainable and sustainability are very overused and are even confusing and hinder progress more than they
Yeah,
actually enable it. And
yeah. It starts to annoy me actually a lot. And a lot of people I talk to in this field, they say, look, by the lack of a better alternative for the word sustainability,
mhm.
we still use it. But there's the downside is you see everywhere the word sustainability, people get tired,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Um, oh, there's another guy and by the way, if I would ask somebody says, yeah, sustainability because my product just lasts longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be made out of crap material, right? That's really harmful.
Oh, but
So
that's interesting because then you are basically saying or bringing to the point or the discussion like diesel cars are maybe they say apparently they are less CO2 produced compared to an electric car because of the batteries, but in a long term, electric car produce way less. So I read somewhere today that a Tesla basically compensates their CO2 emission after 30,000 kilometers, where a diesel car is going to be always bad, right? But it can also last long. So
yeah, yeah, and
it's complicated.
it's a complicated thing, and then I think and you raise a very good example. You saw the car manufacturers also looking at the diesel out. If you look only at CO2,
Hmm.
right, then there's not much. The fine stuff. I don't know the English word. I think it's the
The microparticles.
yes. Thank you very much. They have reduced it so much, but if you need to compare it on different metrics. So not only CO2. We all know
Right.
the battery underneath it at some point we need to
Yeah,
do something with it, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that brings other challenges.
Yeah.
And this whole total cost of ownership type of thing, what we normally look at for if you invest in a building, or you invest in a lease a car program for all your employees, you
Hmm.
look at the total cost of ownership. I think personally the sustainability part needs to be included.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you mentioned that certain large companies are really hard to adjust to these new, trends, or well, not trends, but like these new things that we're expecting from them in order to be sustainable. But if I look near to my house, there's a McDonald's there. I guess everyone has a McDonald's close to their house. And then 20 meters besides that, there's a disposable discounter, like a company that just makes plastic packaging material, and a budget version even at that. Like, how can these types of companies ever become sustainable? It seems to me
Uh,
as an impossible task.
well, and that's the reason why I started with Greenaumatic, looking at the financial part, because money talks. We're living in a world where money talks,
Hmm.
right? Investors come and go, and they start asking more sustainable information from their where they invest in, for the companies they invest in.
Hmm.
Also, in general, you change nowadays in this society. You change things with money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, of course, there are entrepreneurs that basically do this out of intrinsic motivation, and
Yeah.
they feel they need to do something. But the majority, and I call them the mass of company,
Yeah.
they don't. I mean, I think it's something I did. Well, in my head came up, but later on I read that PwC made a very nice paper about this. But you have the front runners, people that jump on it, like Mud Jeans. Maybe you heard about them, or actually Vegetarian Butcher, similar.
Yeah.
Those, those are the front runners. Then you have the laggards at the end that basically, and this is applicable to every market model, that basically don't act.
Yeah.
And maybe they will never act, but at least they will act the latest. And then you have a middle tier, and that middle tier is, yeah, influenceable, so to say. So if they see a benefit financially, they will
Yep.
go. So I think, to get back to your question, these other companies, they will see that there is a benefit at some point. Uh, because and it's simply also the limitation of resources, right?
Yeah.
If you can't buy, let's say, this packaging for what McDonald's is using, if
Hmm.
there is somehow it will be the materials will run out, then it gets more expensive for them. They will start finding other ways.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And
Well, we we spoke briefly now, and it's kind of like the notion, at least to my sense so far, has been a bit maybe on the not so positive side. Like, we've been talking about how things are difficult, how it's difficult to change people, how companies are not willing to address, how people want to keep their comfort.
Mhm.
Do we have a case for hope?
Oh yeah. Well, and it's actually a good point you make, Punch. It's so easy to say what's wrong, right? And what needs to be
Right.
changed. And I think, yes, there's a major thing for hope. There's a lot of things going on. So I talked to some friends of mine even, and they say, you must be a pioneer in this. And I feel like I'm completely not
Lagging
even.
behind.
I'm almost a laggard. Well, this is my feeling, right?
Yeah.
But um, yes, there is a hope. I think if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, that's hope for me. There is a lot
But that's a
of.
goal, right? I mean, it's like put for the future. What do you think has been done over the last few years that gives you more positive view that things are moving, let's say, in some...
Yeah, well, let's say it this way, but it's a feeling. I think we're in a irreversible trend, so there's no way back. That there's people know now, almost everybody knows resources are unlimited, and we need to do something. Most
Well,
people,
Are really resources
Well,
not
we do have a case on
limited?
this podcast of a person who used to be
Are
vegetarian
limited.
for 20 years and now is eating meat again. So it's kind of reversible, I guess.
That's true also.
That's true also. Okay, but just to get back to the question, what I feel is that there's more people have attention to it, and
Hmm.
I see more people try to eat less meat, for instance. They
Not
think more
me.
conscious. No, that doesn't matter. You're
It's different reasons, but okay.
that might be that's your thing as for now, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we'll talk later, but
Well,
I
I do have a question to that because let's say I'm Brazilian. I live in Holland for 10 years, and I
yeah.
constantly still keep in touch with my friends in Brazil. And I have a friend. She actually came to Holland. She studied about sustainability, and she did like a master or something like that.
Mhm.
But then she went back to Brazil, and then the comment that she made to me was like, "Ah, there is no job for me. Like nobody is talking about anything related to anything about sustainability. There is not
Yeah,
about, And I'm wondering like, is that the best? This conversations only happens in Holland or like these developed countries who has a lot of money,
that's
or is
that's
also
fair enough.
was
Yeah,
it
Yeah.
would be better to start like say Greenaumatic
but
in a country who has no awareness of like
no,
my
but
friends if I
yeah.
try to be vegan my friends almost like stop talking to me like what's wrong with you like
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Well, but you have to see this at a global scale, right? I mean, if I'm living in Bangladesh, do you think I will think about sustainability? Yeah, maybe because my house falls in the water.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
but
wow.
will I really think about these things that we talk about? No.
No, you have a
I
different
think
other set
about
of
survival.
problems. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah
I talk about survival. So countries that are, and this is, I think it sounds really wrong, but the more developed countries have time to think about this. And
Yes.
at the same time, their impact is also the highest. Let's look at
Correct.
Africa, their impact is not that high compared to what our impact is.
Hmm.
yeah
And I think the highest impact is at our side here in the Western Europe, US, Asia. But if you look in the developed countries, um, their impact is also less, right? And they
Correct.
have different problems. But I think in general, does that mean we don't should not think about it? No. And I think also if you I went to Africa last year, they are thinking about these things, but on their own at their own level. They
yeah
already think about. They also don't spend a lot of plastic or whatever somehow in the way we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the case for optimism is that, um, well, the last few years, the rate at which people on global scale have been taken out of poverty and moving upwards is it's the fastest growing rate ever, and that's like
It's
really
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's humbling to see that like
yeah,
humanity is doing that, right? We're putting resources
yeah.
are going in that direction. So would that be the case that the sooner we get people on a higher economic or social levels, the sooner more people this movement for sustainability will get on
And
traction.
yeah, and the thing is, it becomes also look at the US. And, besides the fact that most people think about the US, they might deny certain things, but there's a huge influence on the other side as well. They see, for instance, Miami. It well, if they look out for and they don't watch it, it's gone. The water
Yeah,
Yeah.
will
correct.
just go there, and they all know it is has to do with increase of warmth, the sea rises, all kinds of people know.
Doesn't New York have a similar problem as well?
Yeah, I think New York has a similar problem. They know about this. Of course, it's not from a political point of view not sexy to talk about it or whatever because we still in our heads in this old game of making more money. But most people there's an understream that people understand this can't
Yeah,
go on forever.
Yeah.
And I think that's a positive thing that people notice this, right?
yeah,
I mean, and it doesn't. You don't even have to be a green person or whatever to see this. I mean, I know one climate denier uh, in my close surroundings, which I was found really funny. But still, that person sees, okay, this can't go forever because
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, we can talk about this for, I think, 2 more hours. But
Yes.
I just want to
I
touch
want you.
Yeah, that's okay. It's no problem. We can always have you on the show again. So I just want to talk a little bit about your candidacy for the Minister of New Economics. Because, like, let's assume that you win it. What will happen? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I can already tell you I'm not, because I'm not in the top 20, but let's assume I would win it.
Yeah, for the sake of argument.
For the sake of
Hey,
argument.
man, a lot of people listen to this podcast, man. They're going to vote for you.
You still have a week, right?
Vote, I would say. Well, what I would do is, because you get the chance to talk to the politicians, right?
Yeah.
I would ask them really more at a personal level why they outline from a politician point of view all these nice goals they have, and they would like to go for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why certain decisions, and it's by giving examples, but why certain decisions are made, and also to ask them why, and probably they can't help it either, because there's probably a lot of compromise, or there's a lot of political things going on. I would like to understand what's behind it, and what can we change. What because we vote for them, right? We kind of build up a model where we vote for politicians. We all think all similar. Well, we have many parties in the Netherlands, so somehow we all think in a different way on certain topics. So you have this challenge to look at that things will be a compromise. But still, if you see certain things that everybody understands this is a problem, why don't they manage to really get to the core? What is behind this? I still don't get it.
Right.
And I understand. Well, what I would like to do as well is to outline a bit with data to politicians, because I think political parties should use more data. I know that in Belgium there's a politician. Political party called Groen.
Yeah.
And they are looking at, for instance, data of all their energy sources in the whole of Belgium. Well, that gives them a good understanding. Okay, so we spend so much on nuclear energy. We have so much on wind. We have so much on electric solar.
Yeah.
And hydro is probably coming as well. They will think a little bit, okay, this is what we see now, but where do we need to go? And they will try to put their agenda to this.
You think the Dutch government doesn't have all these numbers? I mean, we have a lot of institutions here.
I guess they should have it, but I have not the feeling they are looking at it.
Okay, the problem is something else then.
Yeah,
they need a dashboard, man.
Yeah, but I mean, putting that in front of them, and they maybe say, "Look, we have this data."
Yeah.
Okay, but then my next question is, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
So what's happening? And of course, it's you have data is not everything, right? You need to. It's the simple thing. If you create a report, the report is not the end game. The end game is the discussion around the data, so you can get to a better decision.
And would you actually have a mandate to be able to do something about it? Because understanding is one thing, but actually like forcing change or pushing something to
well, no, I don't think that has a mandate.
Okay.
To be honest, which is a pity. But that part is not clear to me either, because it's a temporary function.
Right.
So and it's part-time as well. So you have to spend 1 day a week.
Okay.
Cool. Well, from my side, Patrick, best of luck. I need to jump from this session of other
Thank you, Pancho.
meetings.
Yeah.
Thanks. Really nice talking to you. Hope to have you again on one of our talks. I think we touched upon a lot of various topics that can actually be a session on their own.
I think so too.
Yeah, it is certainly a pleasure to be here. And indeed, if you guys want to talk about a really specific topic, maybe also great. Very much close to the business.
Yeah.
Happy to do so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, thanks for talking. I'll need to go. Well, I guess you can continue with the rest of the guys.
All right. Yeah. We'll,
thank you. Bye-bye.
We'll close it up with at least my suggestion would be to ask you a few trends and predictions for sustainability in 2021s. Unless you want to touch on a different subject, but otherwise I'd suggest let's do that and wrap it up after. So let's start with maybe some positive trends. Like you already said that, the mindset of a lot of people is shifting. So I guess that's one positive trend that even climate deniers are seeing.
I hope this cultured meat thing, because I think the meat area is a huge impact.
Yeah.
And we can dive into that as well from a water or CO2 or whatever production impact you want to look at it. But meat is proven to be one of the largest impact on the earth. I hope, and I think it will, because it has been going on now for 10 years. This whole project to get to getting it on the table in Singapore this week.
Okay, it's a 10-year thing.
Yeah, I think even longer. Actually, this person that invented it was after the Second World War. He came from Indonesia. He's a Dutch guy. He lived in Indonesia and came back with some ideas on how. I think he has been in camps where he saw a lot of hunger and he wanted to. That was his motivation, as far as I understood the documentary then.
Then it's maybe based on tempeh, I guess, because that kind of almost is like, well, it's not, doesn't taste like meat, but I always say because my girlfriend's from Indonesia as well, and always when we have tempeh, I always say like, man, if I ever become a vegetarian or a vegan, I'd probably eat tempeh like 3 or 4 times a week, because it's almost kind of like meat,
like chicken, right? Everything is like chicken.
Everything is like you don't think chicken is meat, right?
Not at all.
So okay, but let's focus on a different another positive trend, if there is one.
I hope that one will go forward. The other positive trend, I think, is that I see the need from governments to put more regulations.
Yeah,
and they do. You see that the EU is pushing the members to come up with some regulations. You see in Holland, they recently, and also in Belgium, they started, and other countries as well, to get more on the CO2 thing is a huge commitment, of course. But you see more regulations that companies are required to report on their sustainability. Yeah. And I think this is for me, is a positive trend. Of course, it's also where I want to get my business out. But I think it's a positive thing that companies, and should not be overkill. It should be manageable. Otherwise people start reporting for the reporting's sake. But the fact that governments are doing this right now, and you see it's dripping down into the industries. I think that's a positive trend, and I hope in 2020 I would see that developing even more. Yeah.
Okay. And do you see any negative trends, maybe?
Yeah, the greenwashing. I think a lot of more people. It's already there. I see a lot of companies they report for reporting's sake and put it as a marketing thing on the table, because others do that as well, without going into the depths and taking the time to dive into what you really need to do.
Okay, that's called
the value for the other ones who actually do it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm enjoying the conversation. I think we can have another one at a different time, but I think now it's best to wrap it up. So Patrick, let me thank you very much. I'm honored to have you as a guest on the show. And
the first one.
Yeah, man, you're the first external guest.
Thank you for inviting me. It was really a pleasure.
All right. And if you guys, the listener, have any suggestions, or if you also want to be a guest on the podcast at one point, you can always drop us an email at podcast@4scouts.nl. Be sure to check out Greenaumatic as well if you want to know about your environmental impact. That's greenaumatic.com or .nl?
No, .com.
Greenaumatic.com. Check it out. Patrick, thanks again. And Heek, thank you as well. And
thank you.
Catch you guys on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Scoutcast, Roasting Marshmallows, with your host, Rolf Surd. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit 4scouts.nl and on Twitter @4scouts. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Scoutcast, Roasting Marshmallows.